Hello again. Hello everyone. So this is a session at 11:37 UTC on Wednesday, the 8th of December. So we're bang in the middle of the day, and hopefully everyone's awake. This is almost the halfway mark of the conference, and I want to say thank you to all of our sponsors that make everything happen. And the reason why ConCon itself virtually is free. Completely free of charge, both live and on demand. So our platinum sponsors, Subspace Daily, Element. Our speaker now, Will, is from Element. So thank you very much to Element. And we've got Mux as well as one of our platinum sponsors. Gold sponsors, Taloo, 100 milliseconds and Dite. Silver sponsors, Lowway, Sangoma, Millicast, WebRTC Ventures. And our community sponsors, Jambones, Telecurve, Pion. And our AV partners who... Without them, the conference couldn't happen the way that we want to run it. So we've got PSP, the AV company, Millicast, Broadcaster, Subspace, Element again, Mux, and Me Echo. And it's no mistake that so many of our AV partners are also platinum sponsors. They really help make the whole thing happen. So on to today's session. Will's going to talk to us about bridging in Matrix. And bridging, for me, is like the biggest part of Matrix. It's the glue that holds loads of stuff together. But ultimately, bridging is actually used to be quite complex, and like getting your head around how everything worked was quite complex. So when the Matrix team / the Element team said, "What kind of talks do you want this year?" I was like, I really like something on bridging because I think it's the key part of Matrix moving forward. So Will's going to do that now, and then we're going to catch up with Will afterwards. So sit back, relax, go get a cup of tea like right now. Okay, come back. Good. That wasn't long enough to go make a good English cup of tea, but never mind. So come back, sit down on the sofa, sit down at your desk, and watch this great session from Will, and we'll see you in a bit.
Hi everyone, thanks Dan for introducing me. This is a talk about federating beyond Matrix, or how we connected everything to Matrix and how you can join in. This is a talk that's quite heavy on bridges. There's already a talk by Fib 101 on Matrix and sort of how Matrix actually works. This is more the nuts and bolts of how we do bridges. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Harshot or Will. I work on the bridges at Element at matrix.org. And I sort of build out the bridging empire and tooling. But today I sort of want to go into the depths of how this actually works and really how people can get involved in this sort of thing. So we're briefly going to go into what Matrix is. Very briefly, because there are other talks that cover this, and we really want to talk about bridging in particular, but just for those benefit, we're going to talk about it just a little bit. So Matrix is an open standard. Essentially, this means that anyone can build a Matrix client server or bridge, and you can all talk across the same sort of language. You haven't got to build separate protocols for different things. It's all one single spec compliant process. There's a foundation protecting this, so it's not just a bunch of sort of hackers building a thing. This is actually protected by a foundation with people who are in control of the stuff, so you know it's safe. It's for real-time decentralized communication. This means we've got servers that talk to each other, clients that talk to those servers, and they all federate together. So I can run a server in one place, and my company can run a server in another place, and between us, we can all communicate. This is nice because it separates the ownership of your messages away from people you might talk to, and everyone gets a shared view of the conversation. It's a HTTP API, which basically means that clients can talk over standard HTTP protocols. There's no clever TCP special protocols or anything like that. It's very straightforward, just synchronizing pub, sub, and that kind of thing. Again, real-time data. We don't tend to do scheduled data. It's all stuff that's happening live, which basically means it can be used to power instant messaging, VoIP, WebRTC, very hot topic for this conference, signaling, IT, communication, but anything that could be expressed as JSON, so calendaring systems. I've written a presentation software once Sadly, not this one, which could be used on Matrix. But anything that would need a connection to the internet, which needs JSON, which people might use to collaborate together, Matrix is built and bred for, basically. So I just go through, talk about bridges. Bridges itself is a particular concept of Matrix. It's central to Matrix in the sense that Matrix was designed to work as bridges. Work with bridges, as you can see here. We've got a diagram which shows different home servers working together. So these are servers which all exist in different locations run by different people. And you can see here you've got clients sticking off the side of them. These are just people like you or me. And you'll have servers which just ferry messages between each other, which is all great. So we have a Matrix ecosystem, essentially, of people talking. But one of the problems here, of course, is how do we talk to people that aren't on Matrix, which are application servers come in. So you'll see here we have basically what we call silos in the Matrix world. These are basically networks that exist outside of Matrix. They don't have any connection to Matrix, no federation to Matrix or even each other. They exist as siloed walls, so people on Slack can talk to people on Slack, but they can't talk to guys on Telegram unless they out of band connect with them, which kind of sucks, right? Because you've got people who just prefer IRC. Everyone's got a friend who prefers IRC and someone who prefers XMPP and someone who prefers Getter, and people might people who prefer Matrix. But the problem is they can't talk to each other unless they know each other's identities outside, which sucks. And more to the point, I don't want to force my friends who love IRC to talk to me on Telegram just so they can chat to me. We want the ability for people to talk to each other on the way that suits them. So we want to break down those silos. And this is what Matrix does. We sit in the middle of all these different protocols, all speaking different dialects of different languages. And Matrix is one common language, sits in between, and the ferried meshes between them. Matrix isn't just another protocol that exists that's a standard because, hey, we've got enough of those. But it's a standard that's designed for bridging. Bridging is a first-class citizen. We expect people to build bridges on Matrix, and we encourage it, and we have actual APIs built to do this kind of thing, which is awesome. And in this network, of course, you can have people, XMPP, IRC, Telegram, Slack, Getter, and most more bridges I've not mentioned because I can fit them onto this diagram that can all talk to each other. If anyone ever saw my FOSDEM talk in 2018, I actually demoed 4 bridges talking to each other, all simultaneously in the same room, which is just awesome because it means suddenly you haven't got to organize different chat rooms and different platforms. You've actually just got one place you can all talk, and that's great. So now we're going to talk about application services. And application services are basically the bridge API. They're used essentially to give superpowers to bridges. So bridges need the ability to create lots of users on the fly. You need one user for each virtual user on Slack. So if there's Alice on Slack, you want to be able to create them an equivalent Matrix account, but you want to be able to do it very quickly. You don't have to end up typing their login details and essentially knowing that a bridge exists. You also want the ability to send messages as them using the client-server API, which is also something that's very useful. The Application Services API is essentially the client service API on steroids, in the sense that the client service API lets you talk as one user with one access token. The AS API lets you talk as many users with one access token. There are security mechanisms to prevent you from just going, nuts and prevent being everybody on the home server, but you can generally have a namespace on that server and then masquerade as those users, which is just really incredibly useful. And again, it's super easy to use. So for those of you not familiar with a Matrix query, it's REST. And what you tend to do is target a room and then with a send, and then you type your message type. And you can see here, it's very simple to send a message. Just tell it the type of message you want to send and then the body of your message. And the only thing that the AS API adds on top is you literally also specify the user ID. So you just say, this is the user I want to send as, and everything else is handled for you. It's beautifully simple. So I also want to touch on the SDKs that are available for bridges to essentially use. You've got the JavaScript SDKs, which are one of the most mature ones about at the moment. My favorite, the one I work on, is the Matrix Service Bridge Library, and the one we're going to talk about in a bit. It's essentially used for high-level bridge development. So you have a lot of components built into the bridge library, and you essentially just work on building bridges at a very, very high level. So you handle messages coming in, and you have databases built up for you. You have encryption built into it as well, and you have various other tools. The next layer down, you have the bot SDK. And the bot SDK is built by NIFA guy, Travis Ralston. That's sort of a layer below, which lets you send HTTP queries two matrix servers using standard APIs. It has some support for app services, but most importantly, it doesn't have all the nuts and bolts built into it. You have to do a bit more work yourself. So it's sort of about your comfort level of how much work you want to put into your bridge and basically how clever you want that bridge to be. You've got the Python SDK, which is built by the guys at Beeper or Tulir. This is sort of nuts and bolts library again. It's used for the Telegram bridge and the Signal bridge, amongst others, I believe. You've also got the Go bridge, which is used for WhatsApp. And then finally, you've also got the new library, the Rust SDK, which Matrix also develops, which has recently added app service APIs. So if you're a Rusty person, then that might suit you a bit more. So I wanted to sort of go into more about the bridge library itself. What does the library actually do? So it handles all the matrix complexity for you. So in the sense that what you do is you stick the library between your service and the matrix home server, and it handles the traffic to and from there. It does a lot of things for you. So it allows you to receive messages in real time. You can send messages, obviously, room state. Again, I've mentioned lots of modules. Most importantly, it has types. So a bit cheesy, but it literally is. You install the library and you get going. The documentation is all included for you. As I said, there's types, so you can sort of get cracking and build the library. There are many examples out there. The RSC bridge, the Slack bridge, there's some bundled examples in the library itself. So if you're watching this talk and you're thinking, Matrix bridges are great, but how do I get started? This is a library I'd encourage you to check out. So we're actually going to do a demo for this session because I've got enough time to do one. And this is going to be building a bridge in 100 lines between Twilio, which is a popular SMS service for Matrix, and a Matrix client. Essentially, we're going to have a client on one end, which is my element, which talks to a Matrix home server on my machine, which talks to a Node.js bridge, which talks to Twilio, which talks to my Android phone. And I'm just going to go through that with you now. So let's go through the demo. So this is my IDE, and you can see here I've got a few things set up. We've got a bunch of config operations. We've got the bridge library again. We've got Twilio set up with an existing ID. We've got Express and promises. There's some code here essentially to create a Twilio conversation. It's not too important about how this is done. It's more the fact we've got some boilerplate there to, set up the things up to your phone number and Twilio. In the main, we've got the conversation object again, as I explained. We've got a matrix event handler where we basically pull in, so when we get a matrix event to the bridge, we want to handle the event and sort of see what we're going to do with it. So we pull in some data. We log the data, obviously. We check to see if the data is a membership event and it's an invite. So basically, if someone on Matrix has asked the bridge, I want to start a conversation with this phone number, we want to handle that. So we look at the invite. We pull out a phone number. Again, the Matrix ID is sort of before masquerading as users. We have a Twilio prefix and a domain name and a phone number in the middle. We pull out this phone number from the user ID and then just create the intent object. An intent object is a matrix concept, I believe, but essentially it means you can create a SDK object on the fly for a given fake user. So you might want to be able to set display name, join a room, and so on, and do all sorts of things as a user. And this API allows you to do it quite seamlessly. You haven't got to type in a URL each time or the access code each time. The bridge just gives you a simply get intent and what's user ID, which is very straightforward. Once we've started doing our invite stuff, we want to set a display name that's a bit nicer, because by default, Matrix will show you this until you give them a display name, and we think we could just show a phone number with Twilio, which looks marginally better than this. Finally, to respond to this invite to a conversation, we join the room. And then finally, the bridge library obviously supports database objects, and what we do here is we link the Matrix room ID as part of the invite with the remote ID, which is the phone number. And then that's all fine. And so this is how we'd handle conversation coming in. And then later on, we want to handle a message going out. So this is a Matrix guy, again, who sent a message and then room message. We're checking to see if the remote room is already set up, and we know that it is. And we also make sure we're not responding to ourselves. A classic pitfall in most bridge development is you forget to check. If a Matrix message has come in, it's not come from your bridge, and you end up with a looping problem where messages just go backwards and forwards. So we always check to make sure that it isn't us. And if that works, we just open that conversation object from earlier from Twilio and then send a message through. On the Matrix side, It's again, it's a very simple way to set up a bridge. Bridging is, in this case, literally about 7 lines to create a bridge. You get a registration file, a home server URL, which is your matrix home server URL, domain of your matrix server, and then how do I handle an event, which is what we talked about above. Briefly, very briefly, talk about the registration file, which is just a file that gives it some tokens which can be used to authenticate requests. Importantly, it's a security namespace, which is which users can my bridge access. The URL of my bridge, in this case, it's localhost 1337. You probably wouldn't use that in a real bridge, but we're cheating a bit here. And then, of course, you have your bot username, which is Twilio. You can also set a rate limit if you choose, but usually we turn it off because rate limiting bridges is usually a bad idea. So the final thing in this bit of code that we do is we have a express HTTP handler for messages coming into the bridge from Twilio. Again, this is pretty much boilerplate. We pull out the author and the body from the request. We look to see if the phone number from this author exists in the bridge somewhere, and then if it does, we pull out all the entries where it does exist. We then create an intent based upon that author, which is, again, Twilio underscore the phone number, which is the same as what we did here. So that's quite nice and easy. And then we just send a message into the room. So this is all it takes to send a matrix message into a room from a bridge, essentially this few lines. The very, very last thing that we do is we set up a webhook listener for Twilio on 1338 and then the bridge on 137, and then we're started up. And so you can see in quite literally 100 lines, not accounting for the comments as well, we've really got a whole bridge going here. This is enough to do DMs between users. So we're going to start this bridge now and then pray it works. Which, as all demos go, it should probably work fine, right? So the first thing we're going to do is switch down to my Element client. So this is a standard matrix client. It's glossy, and it does essentially a few things. See here, I've set a fantastic avatar for this particular demo. So we're going to start a conversation with our Twilio user. So as we talked about earlier, Twilio is, so I have to try and remember my number, 484501. You can see here, I've already used this once before because it's actually populated this entry. So we create this account, and we see the user's already joined the bridge, which is awesome. So we're going to say hello, phone. And then, in theory, if the bridge is actually working, we get hello phone. Woo! And so there we go. This is brilliant, because now we can just say yay or something like that back. And bridge comes back. So in 100 lines of code, we've now built an SMS bridge. 200 lines of code, you suddenly build something that could do group chats and 300 media. So it's very simple to start the basics of bridges. And today you could come away from this talk and build a bridge very quickly. And, it's brilliant, the amount that you can do with just a small library. So that's the demo, which actually went without a hitch. I'm very pleased with that. There's a QR code here. And if you want to look at the example or, see if you can improve upon it or anything else, there are other Twilio bridges. I'm definitely not the first to build one, but mine was also one of the smallest bridges, so I win on points there, right? So the last thing I want to go through basically on is who is bridging. So I've talked a lot about how you can bridge, but I've not really talked about, who's doing it today, not only good examples, and is this matrix thing really up to scratch? So I just want to name drop that we've got the Libera Chat RSC network on Matrix as it stands right now. This means we've got the whole Libera Chat network bridged into Matrix as a first-class citizen. This isn't like the old Freenode bridge where we had users basically talking through the Matrix org bridge where it was a subset, at underscore Freenode underscore something. This is Libera Chat. So the users are actually named Alice : Libera Chat, which is awesome because suddenly a whole home server hosts to one single bridge, which means if I now want to connect to a channel on Libera Chat, I just type in the name of the channel, : Libera Chat, and here I am. The RSC bridge is something that we've been building for a long time now, since I started at Matrix surely. We've been building this bridge. But now we've actually got a whole network bridge into it as a first-class citizen, and we did that in, a few days, quite soon after Libera started up. So it's awesome to see that now in practice. The other thing that's cool is we have the whole of the Gitter community also bridged into Matrix. Again, exactly the same way. We have a Gitter.im home server connecting up to the Gitter network. In this case, the developers or developer on Gitter has connected a sidecar bridge using the bridge library into Gitter and does ferrying messages across the matrix and then ferrying it back the other way, which is cool because suddenly now we could almost kill Gitter tomorrow and all the messages and all the history would still be there. I'm going to talk into a little bit about how we actually store messages, particularly in regards to historic messages in a bit. But just alone, this is really cool that we have a whole massive chat network that now connects directly into Matrix as first citizen. And as you can see here, Matthew's happy talking forwards and backwards, looking pretty much like a native citizen of Gitter and native citizen of Matrix. The last one I talk about is a bit more of a different project. Matrix often is part of the GSOC program, which is a Google-funded program to have students build software for open source outfits. It's useful to get feedback for them and for us. This year we had an SNTP bridge, which basically means we had the ability for Matrix to gateway in traffic from SNTP and then out again. So the ability to do group chats and DMs, but without any email server in the middle. The bridge becomes the email server. And as you can see from these screenshots, again, while you're doing the best you can with the email format, it's pretty awesome that you can just have a sort of almost a mailing list built into Matrix, as in users can just join a room, have the emails come to them and from, which is, pretty awesome again. So I've talked about 3 bridges, but of course there are way more. We have at least all these logos here and more. In fact, This Week in Matrix blog posts pretty much show a new bridge every week. Bridging is not just a thing that Matrix does, it's a thing that Matrix is these days. We do bridges as our sort of main point, really. And there are just so many out there that, it's really coming to sort of be critical mass where most networks these days have a way into Matrix. Matrix truly is becoming the central network between all these instant messaging platforms, which is great to see finally that we're sort of breaking down those silos and suddenly communication just flows freely. So the last thing I want to talk about in this is what's new. Why have bridges changed in the last year? What's actually changed? So one thing is threading. Threading is now a thing that Matrix sort of did before in a way with replies where you could reply to a message and it was sort of a linear one-way relation. These days, threading is way more professional and it looks much more like a Slack or a team-style threading. Element, as you can see below, has implemented this, but there's also a Matrix proposal to do this properly. And this is useful for bridge developers who want to close the gap between 2 clients remote side sharing threading properly. So anyone out there has been holding out to build a Matrix bridge going, well, the reply stuff isn't good enough. Threading is now here. It's now usable in a sort of demo form. And we'd love to see people using threading, as a bridge thing these days. Next thing talked about a little bit before is history merging. This is something that the Gitter team sort of been working on, but basically the ability to start pulling messages into a Matrix room from before the room existed. So this is amazingly useful because if you've got a Discord community that's been talking for the last 6 years and you suddenly bridge it into Matrix, like, oh, but all my history is gone. I can't use Matrix because I don't have my history. This MSC now allows you to pull all the history in for that channel since the beginning of time, and it does it in a native way that all Matrix clients will understand. It's just brilliant. It basically solves yet another problem we've had where history would go missing. There's no excuse now for history to go missing. Yep. So the very final thing I want to talk about is bridge end-to-end encryption. In the past, we've recommended people use the syncing API for clients and tools like Pantalion to sort of translate encryption into things that bridges understand, because bridge has traditionally only been unencrypted, or TLS, but not end-to-end encryption. Bridge E2E is finally coming, hopefully at the end of this year. We've got 2 proposals out there, MSC 249 and MSC 3202, which should hopefully facilitate the ability for bridges to handle encrypted traffic natively, create devices on behalf of virtual users, and de-encrypt and encrypt traffic. When this lands, you can fully expect all this stuff to be bundled inside the bridge library with tutorials and examples and everything you need to get going. So if you're also holding out, worrying that Matrix doesn't sort of degrades the encryption experience, that's going away too. So sort of leaving a final though, that I've talked a lot, I've said a lot of things, there is a very dense amount of information in this conversation. Please come chat to us on bridges@matrix.org if you have any queries, want to know how to get going, you're overwhelmed by information, we're happy to go through it. We love doing bridges, it's our bread and butter. But thank you. Other than that, hope you enjoyed the talk, and I've got open to any questions you might have.
Thanks, Will. That was brilliant. As I said at the beginning, bridges for me are difficult slash complicated slash simple all at the same time. So it's nice to have someone come in and explain how they work and how you can go and build one. So let's bring in real time Will and say hello. So I've got two questions for you from the audience. The first one is: I heard there was a project to make UI managing bridges with a UI easier. Are you able to tell us more about that? And then also, um, you made a demo about a simple bridge. Is it possible to add as many bridges as we want to a room? Do all third parties play a fair game when bridging?
I'm going to do the second question first. It's easier. Many bridges in one room, definitely. We did a talk at FOSDEM 2 years ago. We added 4 or 5 bridges to a room, which was XMP, Slack, and a bunch of other RSC as well. Like loads them into a room. They all talk perfectly well together. The limitation is always down to the remote side protocol. If the protocol doesn't allow you to bridge multiple users and register them on the fly, and you have to sort of pre-assign and connect everyone together, it's more difficult. Like, how do I say who my Slack user is connected to on WhatsApp? You have to sort of have a login process. But obviously, with RSC, you can create users on the fly, so that's really easy. So it sort of depends on your protocol, but there's no matrix limitation, and we regularly do, and most of our matrix have many bridges because it's great fun. In terms of third parties playing fair game, generally yes, because for them it's mostly a benefit in the sense that having more people on their platform is always good. The matrix is of a size now where you can't just ignore it. We've never had any issues on people going stop bridging to us and explicitly called out matrix or bridges as being a problem. We've had issues where I think incidentally APIs have changed. Necessarily people have thought that this functionality wasn't useful, or things like typing events were going away in Slack as an example. Probably because no one in Slack thought, what bot is using typing events for any useful information? Of course, Matrix uses it because we love typing events, but these things happen. But we've never had a lawyer turn up on our doorstep and say, stop bridging. And we don't expect it because at this point, I think bridging, especially legally, as we've sort of talked about a bit, is becoming almost a requirement in the EU world. So why would they stop here? To answer the question about easier to manage, we're working on a project to sort of invent generic UIs for bridges. At the moment, we've got sort of bot commands, and you might have seen the integration manager briefly in Element, where you can press buttons to integrate, but it's very limited to a few bridges. Where we're planning to go with this is invent a way where any bridge can expose some basic HTML to say, here's how I manage your thing, with fallbacks to bot commands for clients who don't display HTML. But the idea is our new focus in 2022 is to make bridges easier to use. Matrix has tons of bridges now. There's no beat around the bush. There's like many, even Twilio, we've got RSC, we've got so many bridges. It's not so much expanding our reach as trying to expand the UX and trying to make it so anybody can now set up a conference and run a Slack bridge for it without having to ask me or look at documentation. It should be easy. It's within our grasp. There are PRs out now on the SDKs to support this provisioning UX workflow. It's just at this point putting hands to keyboard and doing it, which is what we're doing next year.
Cool. Okay. And if just with my sponsor hat on with Element, if you wanted to go and do something like have an EMS instance with one of your new plans, and you get a load of bridges for free, don't you? Within those new plans, so you can get started very, very easily in terms of like just paying a very small amount of money to EMS, and then you get some bridges to WhatsApp, Telegram. I can't remember the other one.
And Signal. Yeah. So WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal. Yeah. And the nice thing about that is, of course, it's open source stuff as well. So those bridges, basically, you're paying $5 for this plan, but it's all going back into us working on making those bridges better. So, yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. I found it great. I hope everyone else did too. So if you're watching it on demand, then if you found it useful, then like the video and then subscribe to our channel. And if you're watching it live, then fantastic. Thank you very much. We will be back later with some more content. So watch out for some more content later on. Thank you.
Thank you.